Hier werkt hij. Hier denkt hij. Ze hebben hem een trailer gegeven op het universiteitsterrein, omdat hij sigaren rookt en op de onmogelijkste tijden aan het werk gaat. Nadat we 2 dagen hebben gepraat, in het laboratorium en in de trailer, haalt hij bier op de campus. Ze zeggen dat hij niet uitblinkt in bescheidenheid. Lynch, die denkt dat we ons bewustzijn tenslotte zullen begrijpen en verbeteren. Dat we zelfs de dood naar onze hand zullen kunnen zetten. Dat denkt hij. Is dat niet een beetje veel gedacht? Bescheidenheid. Is dat niet de werkelijke doodzonde? Vraag ik. Hij lurkt aan zijn bier, blijft even stil, zegt dan: waarom zou je je neerleggen bij het noodlot, als je het kunt veranderen? Er is geen enkele troost als je je neerlegt bij dit leven.
I know. Let's not watch TV. Okay. No! Turn it on! Turn it back on! No, Beavis. This is Christmas. Let's go out and find some chicks. Oh, yeah. Tis the season for chicks, yeah.
Life was painful. Life was difficult. I wish it was painful is too strong, but life was difficult. I hated school. I, to this day, can, if with a moment's thought, resurrect the absolute dread that I had about school. Mm. You know, the horror of going. I dreaded it. I mean, it was a physically painful experience to go to school. And my parents were fighting all the time and this sort of business. And so, you know, you're an unhappy child in a way. And you find you can draw, you can do this kind of thing, and that helps a lot. I found out I could read, and then I found that I could look at pictures and paintings and all this sort of business. And there's all this world of, not only is it the physical appreciation of, say, a picture of Masaccio or something, mm-hmm. It's also the recognition of that human genius exists, that people can do things, that people do step outside of ordinary life and do things. And that to me was enormously consoling. That even though 99% of what goes on around you hardly seems to be special or out of the ordinary, it actually seems pointless. It's just life. This is now a child's eye view, okay? It seems pointless. You're just living. You're just recreating the political patterns. You're just doing this, you're just doing that. But periodically, human beings do something that mm-hmm. elevates. And those who are sitting there, those children are looking at those things, are going, somehow that makes it okay, gives it purpose, gives it direction. To me, that was consolation. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what it was like.
Hey, buddy, see any chicks yet? Not yet. Where the hell is everybody? This sucks. Hey, let us in. We want to meet some chicks.
Go home, you dumb punks. It's Christmas Eve. Store's closed.
Oh, buddy, look! I got the new wet hooters! Beavis, everything I need for the rest of my life is in this store. Yeah, and it's closed. This sucks. Life sucks. Yeah. Life sucks, then you, let's see, life sucks, and then, and then you die, bunghole.
Is it harder to do something terribly important than to do something that's not very important? Mm. Now, the assumption is it is. It must be, otherwise everybody would be doing something very important. But that's an assumption. And you begin to realize, actually, that's not necessarily true. What keeps most scientists from tackling the grand issues is modesty. Now, that's a real thought. So I said, well, what are the major problems? Starting about 15 years ago, I began to say, okay, I've published all these papers, I've had all these grants, what are the kinds of questions that would fairly occupy someone for the rest of their life? And so I could see three profoundly mysterious things on the brain horizon then. And I think actually that are profoundly mysterious in the life sciences. Okay, and the first of these, remember this is 15 years ago, the first of these is how do you encode a memory in a biological sense, in a cell sense. And why that's mysterious is not obvious to the outside. It sounds like, well, why is that more mysterious than the heart beating? But in fact, it's very mysterious because the process of memory is absolutely counterintuitive biologically, right? You have a brain in which every protein is going to be torn apart and replaced each month. Virtually every protein in the brain will be destroyed and replaced within a month, some within hours. Yet you're expecting this thing to impose a memory that's going to last a lifetime.
Yeah.
It's mysterious. And then you start adding on all the other restrictions. I want this memory to be formed in a second. Oh, okay, that's the triggering time. I want this memory to be cemented within 6 hours, well, let's say 30 minutes. Best guess is now. So I want it to start in a second, less than a second. I want it to be completely cemented in half an hour. And I want it to last indefinitely. And I want this to happen without using up, I want to be able to store countless billions of these things, or some huge number of these. Well, these are all very difficult criteria. Biologically, this makes no sense. So that was a mystery that went back to the last century. How can the brain do that? That was the first one. And the second mystery is one that stands right in front of everyone that no one notices. Why does the brain get old? And by the way, most people in gerontology believe that it's the process of the brain that's getting old that's dragging the body with it. So why is the brain getting old? And your answer is, well, everything gets old. Well, yeah, it's true, everything gets old, but they don't get old at the same rate. There are crows that live to be 110, but you've never seen a guinea pig older than 8. Why? Well, amazingly enough, there's no theory of this. There's no hypothesis of this. And I found that to be incredible. And as I was getting older, visibly, mentally, introspectively, in any regard you might mention, and I was annoyed by it. I was very annoyed by the fact that I was getting old. And here I was, a brain scientist with all these successes behind me. I thought successes. And I had no idea why it was happening. And you know what that's like? Now, what's that? Here I am getting old, and I don't know why. What's going wrong in here? So I decided that we were going to develop a theory of getting old. What happens to the brain? And then the last one, the last of the three, the trilogy that I decided I would devote myself to, is the question of basically it's an idea, the question of how is this thing organized such that cognition and thought emerge from it. That's a fly.
That's a fly.
Shall we see if I got it?
It's there.
Thought I had some drama.
He will keep returning.
He'll keep returning.
Yeah.
So that was it, that question. Let me give you an example of what I mean by saying this is a mystery about the way the brain...
The third aspect.
Yeah, the third one. Because you say, well, that seems rather obvious. But you don't realize how the absence of the theory, the extent of the absence of the theory. So let's ask this question. Here's a pen. I see the pen and I move my hand to it. What was the circuit that went from that to this?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we brain scientists will sit on television programs and talk happily away about our ideas about how cognition and thought emerge. But you say, well, it seems to me if you don't have a basic theory of how you see that and you move your hand, no theory. What's the connection? I can tell you that this light activates this, and there are cells back here that become active.
Yeah.
We have that well described. And I can tell you there are cells right here that are becoming active for me to move the hand. Well, then it's done. Tell me how the cells here communicate. No idea. Isn't that amazing? No idea. I found that to be embarrassing.
We know we don't know what we know.
We should have a theory of that, though. We should at least have the outline. I mean, after all, if we don't have any theory at all, are we proceeding mindlessly? Are we just collecting data, putting it in a big box, and hoping that the great brain scientist of the sky will come down and put it together? Oh, come on. That's too modest. All we really need to do is ask the question. So I said, fine, we need to ask the question. How is it organized? Such an information comes in at one end, goes out the other end, and has these properties in between. So that's what we've been doing. Those three questions have occupied my scientific life for the last 15 years. Those three general things.
First two, you succeeded more or less to accomplish what you wanted.
I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied that we now have the field. We are very close to a standard model of how memory is encoded. If you had told a brain scientist that 20 years ago, they would have said that's absurd.
Yeah.
It'll be centuries. And I've heard that, by the way. So I think that, yes, we are very close now to a standard model. Now, the model's wrong, but it's catching a big piece of the truth. And it's going to be wrong in major parts and minor parts, but it's not mysterious any longer. We can tell you down to the frequency codes that the neurons are using to signal, store this bit. We can tell you the receptors are activated, the ions that are flowing, the enzymes that are turned on. Although we could give you a picture of this thing now that begins to approximate the picture of why blood cells coagulate.
Yeah.
So why blood coagulates. So that was been very satisfying. It's demystified.
I remember you talking this afternoon about you leaving a mark on history. Yeah? Otherwise life would be senseless, useless. Is this really consoling to know that your ideas are surviving you and that they are servants of wisdom in the future when you're not there anymore?
Yes, it is. It is. I don't know how else I don't know how else I could console myself. I mean, there's certainly. I look back on what I've done, and if I hadn't done that, if I had lived another life, I really wonder what I would be thinking now about what I've achieved. I mean, what is it that's there? What's there? What was it? Just walking? Was it walking in the sand, and then the tide comes in and the footprints are gone? That's it. That's all. That's the whole game. I can look back and see papers that I published 25 years ago, results, people, laboratories working on those results, still following up. My footprints are still there.
Yeah, and they will survive you, that's what you mean.
Yeah. That's become important. Not 10 years ago, not 15 years ago.
Has become important.
Has become important. In the last few years, it's become important.
Why? You're about 53, 54 now?
Yeah. Yes.
The magical frontier of 50?
Somewhere, as you begin, I suppose the easy answer is, the sense of mortality starts crashing in on you. But I think it's more than that. I think you begin to take the pleasure, what you thought was going to be what would sustain you, what would console you, suddenly doesn't, or not suddenly, but gradually doesn't mean as much.
Mm-hmm.
So what's to replace it? And when I was 30, if I had $1 million, that would be great. That would be a thing to have. If I was popular with women, if I would be this, if I'd have a fast car, if I'd have a good life, if I'd be famous, if people would applaud me everywhere, in this sort of business, if I could be on television. If I could have those things, that would be great, and that's what I felt. But as time goes on, first place, you have the $1 million, you do go on television, you do things, more things happen. But beyond all that, something else is happening. You start to see those as just something, part of human life, and then they're no longer very consoling. You look for something else, and something has to replace it. I think that's a trend. I think that's a trend of life. I really do. I think that's normal, or I don't know if it's normal, but I think that's a thing of life. So it's not just mortality. It's that the things that once sustained you, once consoled you, don't.
Not at all anymore.
They have no
A
punch.
million women, beautiful cars, on television for the first time. Whoa.
It would not be enough to get me up out of bed. Well, maybe a couple of them. But no, I mean, it would not make life worth living. No.
When did the idea that you were mortal crash in? Do you remember?
No, I think it grew. I think it came slowly. At first place is a loss of certain mental acuity that comes with age. You know, we learn how to deal with that. You gain mental faculties with age,
Yeah.
but you lose things, and you notice it.
Yeah.
You notice it. I mean, and physically, these things accumulate, and you begin to feel, my God, the sands are running out. That certainly intensified my interest in why it was happening.
Aging.
So the feeling it. Why is this happening to me? What's going on here? I was always younger than other people. I mean, I got my PhD when I was very young. I was the youngest full professor at the university. I was the youngest this, the youngest that. One day you're not the youngest anything. So society is also telling you you're not the youngest. So all these things. And then you feel, well, it's really happening. This is really happening to me. I'm really getting older, and I'm really heading toward death. Now, as a scientist, that just doesn't seem realistic, but I can understand I don't understand why this is happening. So I'd say it's gradual, somewhere in the mid-40s. What really happened to me, we once spoke about this. I think what happened with me, I don't know with you, but it'd be interesting to hear if you had the same sensation. Up to a certain point in my life, my timeline was continuous.
Yeah.
I felt that I was the same person that I was when I was 10 years old. I was now that same person, 30 years old. And when I was 40, I certainly felt like the same person that was 20. But somewhere past 40, it snapped. And I can no longer retrieve. I can retrieve the sort of objective memories of the 10-year-old that you're talking about. But I cannot put myself back in that child. And that was very noticeable to me. It was very important for me to be able to go on that elevator of memory, up and down, back and forth across the time. And that snapped.
Was that related to the sense of being mortal also?
Yes, I think that...
Direct relationship.
Yeah, I think that brings in the sense of mortality. Because, you know, you can't jump in that time cart and go back to when you were younger. And I could. Mm-hmm. It was a very noticeable thing when that stopped. Not that I was so much in love with that younger Gary, but that it scared the hell out of me. What's going on here? You know, I mean, bothered me again. I think it makes you aware, well, what about all that storm undrawn of that life? Mm-hmm. What about all those memories? What about all those promises of everlasting?
Where are they?
Where are they? What did it mean? You know, those great adventures that you had, you know, when you're 18 years old, you know. I mean, I lived a very exciting life back then. And the thought that, gee, I don't have it. I mean, I can tell the stories, I can tell you the objective features of it, but I can't
feel it.
But I can't feel it. No. That's it. I can't feel it. Now that's a very, to me at least, that was a very depressing thing. Very depressing thing. I can't feel it any longer. Does that mean those memories are gone, that it's all shot, that that's it? You know, being thrown out of college, the adventure of it.
Kind of dying when you're still alive. They're taking your life away from you. They, who is they, but... Yeah?
Right.
You're still here.
Right. You're still here, but they've taken away a piece of your life, whoever they are. You've loved biology. Yeah. This aging your own biology has taken away a piece of your life that was a great piece of life, and just trashed it. Well, that gives you a sense of how ephemeral things are.
Yeah.
Boy, that's scary. So okay, now I'm heading down here. I'm going to lose this. This person that's here now, if I live long enough, is going to be dead. I'll be there, but this person will be dead.
Yeah.
Will be gone. Vanished. More than dead. Vanished. So, boy, that's not good. This is not good. So these lead you into these questions. Okay, why is it aging? Why are we losing the memories? And all these kinds of great things that we investigate. I want answers to those questions. You see, I want answers to those questions.
The inevitability of fate, of dying. Yeah.
Yeah, but why does it have to be that way? Why can't we stay the same person, have the same memories, the same emotional memories, and just carry them? That would be much more
Till the
satisfying.
moment that we say it's
Boom.
enough.
That's it.
Yeah.
Why can't we do that? Why does it have to be this way? This seems awfully cruel.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think it was actually that moment of realizing that there had already been a death in this timeline, in this person, that made me realize there's going to be another one. And that certainly is going to give you a sense of mortality.
And the nature of your demand for consolation changed dramatically.
Mm-hmm. Right. Those great...
Behind that, you projected your consolation. Isn't that the case?
That's good. That's very close to it. Yes, because you see, that person back there when I was 18 had all those great adventures and everything else, but it's all gone.
Yeah.
I can't use any of that. I can still look back to those papers published in 1972. 1972 is when I had my first, what I would call major discovery, the thing that, set off a real scientific change. I mean, people were really excited, and, we were written, I was in the press, and hundreds of people, everybody started working on the thing. The consequences of that are very much still with me, and they're not going anywhere. Okay, a century from now, it will still be the case that we showed in 1972 that this part of the brain, which people think involved in memory, can grow new connections in the brain even when it's an adult. It will still be there. So even if the Gary that was there in 1972 is gone, even to me, that will still be there. And I can still take the paper out and look at it. I can still check out the literature and see that people are still following it up. I can still be interested in it. And that's consolation, all right, with a big C.
Are you afraid of dying?
No. It's not something that occupies much of my time, thought. And as I said, that's the wonderful arrogance of the scientist. I intend to do something about it.
You won't manage. You won't manage.
That's
You're too late.
I love that, though. That's what that's a universal reaction, amongst the scientific community, the lay community. When you say, no, this aging thing, I think 120 is a better age.
Yeah.
Everyone says the same thing. No, that's not possible.
But we're on the edge of realizing such a possibility, or not?
I think the possibility will appear the minute a theory of brain aging is put on the table.
And you're near to it.
Yes.
1 year, 2 years.
Oh yeah, we'll have a theory of brain aging within a year. I think we have found out why this thing. We have an idea now why this thing is starting, what's going on, and we're testing it. We're going to be testing it. We've been publishing papers now for the last decade. In 1984, we did an experiment that caused a great deal of interest, in which we, by injecting a drug in the brain, were able to turn parts of the rat brain, take the cells and make them look like they came out of 80-year-old humans. And we were able to make that happen in 72 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's been widely studied. It's a widely reproduced effect. But we can, right now, go in the laboratory and I can generate most of the signs of human brain aging in a week. And I can now do it in a dish. Okay? So if I told you, you have all these great signs of aging, age pigment, atrophies and all these things that are in the human brain. We're losing these synaptic connections in our brain at this rate and all. Suppose I said, well, we can reproduce most of that right now in a dish by just adding a couple drugs. Wouldn't you think that we're getting closer to understanding what it is that's causing those conditions? We've already pinned it down to blocking 2 or 3 enzymes, so we can make most of human aging, brain aging, happen in a dish. In a rat brain, where it never normally happens. So yeah, I think we're closing in on what are the conditions that lead to human brain aging. I incidentally notice I'm not the least bit interested in rat brain aging. So yeah, we know that. So maybe this is crazy, but I don't think we're very far from an organizing hypothesis as to the causes of brain aging. And when we have a hypothesis, that hypothesis, I think, will suggest treatment. And that'll be fun.
Empakine. Code word.
Empakine increases the efficiency of the majority class of receptors in the brain. The receptors that are responsible for the cortical neurons talking to each other. The receptors are responsible in the end for the microsecond to microsecond operations of cognition. Incredible discovery. We took those drugs and we were the first people to improve communication between cells in the cortex.
What's the implication of it?
Well, the implications roll on and on. The immediate implication is that the many diseases are believed to be, well, not many, but at least a large number, or a number of psychoactive conditions, clinical conditions, are thought to be due to inadequate communication between cortical cells. So in Alzheimer's, you've lost contacts, you see. They die. And in fact, they die as part of normal aging.
Yeah.
Every day, we're losing thousands of contacts in our cortex. By the time we're at your age, the thing looks like the forest in winter. All the leaves have fallen onto the forest floor, right? Now these guys, their forest is green and leafy, but yours, where do you get this we stuff? But your poor forest, it's the fall. We're waiting for the winter. We've lost all those contacts. Each leaf is a contact with another tree, and you lose them. When that happens, the brain slows down, the cognition slows down, the memory begins to fail. In Alzheimer's, it's extreme, but even in normal aging, it causes serious problems, as in memory. So the obvious idea is, why not make the remaining contacts work better? Okay? The other point is, just as in that tree analogy, when the tree loses its leaves, if they don't come back, if you don't make the remaining leaves work hard, the risk you run is that the tree itself will die, right? The same is thought to be true in the brain, that if you lose these connections, you not only have a brain that isn't working well, but the cells will begin to die because they need the force, the driving force from other cells, the other communication. Just as a muscle must be exercised, the brain cells must be exercised. So the idea would be, we'll give you a drug that enhances the remaining connections, all right? And you will immediately feel, so goes the theory, within minutes, this stuff gets into the brain as fast as alcohol. I should mention, by the way, there's 150 of these ampakines now, maybe 200. He went on and on and on. You will feel, suddenly, the connections you will feel in the brain, things are working right. Something like it used to work in the spring. Long term, the expectation is, and by the way, we have evidence for all this now, but long term, we expect, and we've experimentally observed, that if you continuously treat with this, the brain cells will turn on this genetic machinery that says grow. The growth factors, they're called. And we know that ampakines do both those things. They improve the communication between the cortical cells immediately, and with prolonged application, they cause the growth factor genes to become active. Now we expect now, we don't have to observe this, but the long-term effect of that should be that the cells will stay healthy. And that's what ampakines are about. That's the immediate application. That's the immediate answer to it, what they're supposed to do. That's what they were designed to do. These were drugs that were designed from the carbon to the purpose. Okay, this is a rarity in neuroactive drugs. Beyond that, there's some real questions as to what they might be used for. What about normal people?
Yeah.
What about young people? What about the cameraman? He's got big leafy forest there. What's he using
What's
for?
happening with him when he takes ampakine on a daily basis?
Well, we don't know the answer to that. I mean, we have data
What
for
do you
young
suspect?
people. Well, I'll extrapolate from animals. What I suspect will happen is that you will be able to, in the short term, you'll be able to string together longer circuits. Thought is a process of taking brain cells and assembling them into circuits. How long and complex can you make a circuit now? Let's say, in your case, being in the television industry, let's say 8 or 9 connections. Brain science, probably 15 or 20.
That's it. Just go on.
No, but it's a business of how
Yeah.
many cells can you assemble into a circuit? How complex can the thought be? So the apakines make it easier, and again, this is experimentally observed. They make it easier to build complex circuits. They have their biggest effect. The more complex the circuit, the bigger the effect of the apakine. Okay, that's an experimental observation.
Yeah.
So one possibility is they will allow you to build circuitries. You know, and when I say build, this is momentary.
More and more and more.
Yeah.
Longer, longer, longer.
Longer chains, more and more complexity.
Yeah.
So you understand when I say when I build a circuit, what we're talking about is you spring this thing up. It's there for milliseconds, tens of milliseconds. But you say, I want this cell, this cell, this cell, this cell. I want you to work together, string. Get rid of that one, build another one. That's what we're doing. If you could make those circuits more complex, if you could hold it up together a little bit longer, you presumably would be able to carry out complex functions of a novel kind. Now we
Such
have,
as?
well, we have a series of experiments were done by a fellow named Sam Deadweiler in North Carolina, professor there. And he found that rats, normal rats, doing a very complicated rat task, were able to learn strategies that normal rats never learn. That's what appears to be happening.
New behavior.
New behavior. Yeah, that's what he found.
Yeah, drugs creating new human possibilities.
Yep.
New human behavior.
Right.
And you don't know where it ends.
No, and I don't know what those behaviors will be. And I'm glad I don't. And it does give me a kind of consolation to think that maybe it's all true, and 2 years from now or 4 years from now, people will be saying, I now have thoughts that no human being ever had. I'm able to go further into a complex world. I can build strategies that are beyond what's happened in the past. To me, that's exciting. Happy.
Happy.
Happy. Not closed in. We're escaping limitations. I think that's great. Well, if the thing we were talking about with the ampakine is correct, there may be a world of thought that we don't know, we have not even sampled, haven't begun to sample. Certainly, as we're progressing now to understanding where emotions and feelings and all these businesses are coming from, again, opportunities are becoming available. Yeah, it would be really boring if we have to stay as the same Homo sapien that we've been since the year 20,000 BC. But suppose in the year 2005, a possibility of another kind of Homo sapien becomes available, a kind of...
Who can change this behavior continually and improve it.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Can go into other spaces and see things and do things that we can't do. No, we are the same plain vanilla H sapiens for 50,000 years. There's no, other than the fact that the brain got slightly smaller, as we can see all around us. Other than that, it's the same old human. Do you really? I mean, isn't it possible that that we'll have another kind of human possibility in the next 10, 20 years? I mean, isn't that the adventure we're about to play? Suppose we had the greatest of physicists and they've reached the limit. What's going on in their heads?
Witten, for instance.
And it's there it is. There he is with 32 cell circuits. As opposed to these more mundane 5 and 10 cell circuits. But it's still 32.
Yeah, and he still doesn't have his unifying formula for the universe. Here comes Lynch.
Now
saying, Witten, here's your amplicon.
now you have your 40 cell circuit.
And now you know it.
And then with that 40 cell circuit, science fiction, it is now, but I remind you of those animal results. And they're startling. I mean, the guys that did this stuff are very, very expert researchers. They've done this for years. They've seen rats learn things that rats aren't supposed to learn. Why not?
Yeah, they're not rats anymore, you can say. Physically.
They've learned not to be bothered by things that normally drive rats crazy. So what are they? It may seem outrageous, but the thing that's funny about that is improving memory. I remember when I would go up to people and I'd say, "Yeah, we're going to build memory-enhancing drugs." They'd say, "Oh no, you can't do that." And I'd say, "Why is that?" And the argument would go like, "Oh well, nature has set limits." See, I think one of the resistances that everyone has. I mean, I know it sounds like, "Oh, you're really needing to." You need a cure, so you're going to find it because you need it. I understand how that might sound, but people believe, for example, oh, well, the memory machine of the brain evolved to think and all this. I mean, it's probably optimized. And therefore, how are you going to build a drug to make it better? Because it's already optimal.
Yeah.
I found that to be, incredible. But that blocked many people from even thinking of trying because surely evolution optimized the brain. Well, I frankly think that evolution did a pretty bad job in building the human brain. But same with aging. I think what's really bothering you is the thought that deep down you can't shake it. Come on, we're not about to challenge what seems to be the most important limit on human beings. I mean, isn't that built into the gene someplace? Well, forget God, but certainly isn't that built into... Wasn't man given 40 in some years or something like this or whatever it is? That's got to be in the genes. You can't beat that biological limit. Come on, Lynch. You can't do that. And I say, well, I don't see any reason in the world why we can't beat that. I once published a paper and this is many years ago, I published a paper where I made the point, I think, that if we were birds and had brains this big and we were birds, we should live to be about 240.
Yeah.
And of course everyone said, well, we're not birds. And I said, well, but still, birds are, if they can do it, why shouldn't we? A mouse lives 3 years or 5 years. But bats live 40 years. All right, bats are about the same size as mice. Now you tell me, why do you think a bat lives 10 times the lifespan of a mouse? No idea. You know what? Neither does anyone else in the field of neurogerontology have any idea. But I know.
Tell me.
No, it's part of an enzymatic process that we think is critical to aging.
Mm-hmm.
And bats are very different. We published a paper on why bats live so long. It's in the scientific literature. Hypothesis about it. I think this is a problem that we look at, that it's like an almost a belief that we're limited somehow by biology, and we are, of course, but somehow certain of these things seem sacred. You couldn't possibly make human beings smarter. And you say, well, why not? Well,
because we are poorly constructed. We're not the climax of evolution.
Oh, in my opinion, we're not. No, but that's a tiny minority. Think of everybody. Oh, evolution spent so much time giving you language and throwing skills and this skill. I don't believe any of that. So I don't, and I also don't believe evolution had the slightest interest in how long we live. I don't believe there is any genetic.
That we are living.
Right, exactly. So I don't think there's any genetic biological limit to the lifespan of human beings. I think we die for obviously for biological reasons, but it's not built into the gene.
When did you discover that human beings like rats or mice or bats were not optimal at all?
That's a very interesting question. It's funny, I don't think that it ever occurred to me that human beings were optimized for this environment. That was the business of looking at a society in which human beings are engaged in activities which could not possibly, for which there could never have been evolutionary pressure. I mean, if you go...
High wheel races.
Right, right. You know, skating on in the canals in the Netherlands. What was the curveball in baseball? What was the evolutionary pressure for a curveball?
Yeah.
Reading. Now, one always puts in, there must have been an evolutionary pressure for language. But no, I actually believe, and this is something that Stephen Gould and I, I've published a paper once that my one and only foray into the area of human evolution, and it's published in the Journal of Human Evolution, in which I argued that the big brain itself was an accident, complete accident, that it was there never was any pressure. Now, I would back off that position some now, but I think in general, still maintain that most of the big brain, the thing that we believe makes us what we are, what does make us what we are, that was not, I don't believe that was an evolutionary pressure for that, which, by the way, puts you into a minority of one. But I don't think that that's the way it happened.
Mm-hmm.
We invented old age. Someone once made the great suggestion that menopause was invented with the Egyptians. I mean, what was the average age of, very few people lived past the age of 30 at the time of, say, the Cro-Magnons. So why would you imagine that we've been optimized in some regard with terms of longevity? Or that there was some biological pressure that set the rate at which you're aging? No, you're aging at a rate you are. Your brain is working the way it is because of, after all the important stuff is taken care of, the brain was what's left over. And as far as aging's concerned, that's a complete after effect of the rate at which you develop, I suspect.
Yeah.
No, there's a beauty to human beings, all right, but I don't think we should look forward in terms of biological perfection. Or
No,
even
but
environmental optimization. I mean, there is. I believe that is the overuse of Darwin, the belief that, or the sense you can't escape it. Those just so stories.
Yeah.
Human beings emerged, and then the brain was shaped by this, and the brain was shaped by that, and then and that made us optimal for social interactions, and then we had to have the advantage that. We short of fang and absent of claw, that we had to have something to make up for this. So evolution worked on the learning machine in the human brain and made it this, and then it put in language and all this. Frankly, I just never accepted any of that, and always have seen it as a misuse of Darwinism.
Mm-hmm.
I have suspected. I've never published, but I once wrote the best part of a book on this. I have a feeling that what happened after God got displaced as the thing that looked after humanity and made us special, made us really special. After God got knocked off the perch, the very thing that knocked him off the perch now took over. That in a sense, Darwin filled God's niche. And so where we once had a deity that said, I'm going to make you in my image, we now have a biological process that says, I will shape you to rule this planet. Okay, and give you domain over, notice how the languages roll out, domain over all the other animals and over the rivers and the seas and the sky above them.
Stewards of life's continuity on Earth, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I've never bought it. I just, from college on, I just never bought any of that. It never made it. I could look around at a world of human beings stumbling all over themselves. I just didn't see any evidence of this perfection. And then, of course, as someone who's deeply interested in history, as I was, you become aware that it's impossible to imagine that there was an evolutionary pressure for building the pyramids. But what are they doing that for? You know, I mean, and also, why is the pinnacle of creation so, you know, what this nonsense of the ziggurats and, no. So that's liberating, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in some ways, not to be too grandiose about it, but in some ways it was liberating not to see ourselves as shaped by the living God who made us this way, and therefore anything that would change us from that would be blasphemy. In some ways, I suppose that when you tell people that, I guess the next thing we have to do is find drugs that'll slow brain aging, they're saying, oh, that's Darwinian blasphemy. Nature shaped us to be this.
Yeah.
Never had it. Never had a sense of it.
Never.
No, I've just never liked that idea. If we didn't have this great future that science could open up to us, this, you know, take us to this next level of something, God, what a dreary thought. What a dreary looking future the species has got. Stuck in this? This is it? That wasn't, didn't like it.
If I'm talking about the mind of God, like Stephen Hawking does, or Einstein, what really interests me is whether God had any choice in the creation of the world. The word God keeps coming up every time and again.
I came from you know, a very dense Catholic background, and so there's quite a lot of God, obviously. God is, for me, it's a sort of a concept. I put it this way: I wouldn't be surprised. I don't have the attitude that Steven Weinberg has that we're still fighting a battle about God and everything else. But if tomorrow afternoon God showed up and said, oh, okay, you guys are really catching on, and tomorrow afternoon you're going to find me anyway. So I thought I'd show up today and introduce myself. I'm God, and I built the whole thing. I would not be terribly surprised. There's enough mystery left that it wouldn't surprise me. But I see no need for us now. I feel no. I see nothing that makes me think that there's nothing that makes me feel there must be a God. There's nothing calling for God.
Less and less and less. Less and less.
Yes. I mean, you know, it's what do we need God to explain at this particular moment? Mysteries, we still have mysteries. That's part of science, right? We're used to that. We solve these, we'll solve those, we go on and on. Why not assume the mysteries we have right now are just unsolved mysteries that will be solved?
Mm-hmm.
So, but on the other side of that, I guess it wouldn't surprise me if God showed up.
Will we find an interested God in the final laws of nature? I think we will not, Steven Weinberg. We are not playing a starring role in any sort of grand cosmic drama.
Ah, yeah. Well, that I accept.
Yeah.
We are not playing a starring role in any grand cosmic drama, but I don't know how one, you know, at the end of it, I don't know how one rules it out. Or frankly, why one bothers to try. In a way, I don't understand Weinberg's problem with God. I mean, why try and rule it
You're
out?
just saying we are eating him up by explaining time and again what is happening in evolution and with the human species. And finally, we will have swallowed him.
Well,
totally.
one has to be careful with that because we're building a theory of beyond the business of aging and all that. You know, science in its endless arrogance believes that it will, not arrogance, whatever. Science intends to give a theory of the mind. All right? And that's going to be a brain theory.
Yeah.
We have every intention of doing this. Tools have been developed in the last 5 years that let us see the brain in a way that is unimaginable 15 years ago. I could show you on this computer here, if it was turned on, I could show you patterns of the essential circuitries that generate complex behaviors. It was absolutely impossible 5 years ago. So we're going to build a theory of cognition, and then we're going to build a theory of how mind, we're going to put new words for what mind is into that theory. Now that we're not going to do next year or next 5 years. But people will be doing that. You have to be careful that even though we're giving God an ever smaller island to be standing on, that science itself may find something that indicates that this is beyond.
Mm-hmm.
That could happen. Just as those physicists chasing this thing down further and further, we may come to some irreducible mystery and something that I don't know. That's not my business. I don't know what happens when we start to build a theory of cognition and mind. I have a feeling that will be as counterintuitive as quantum mechanics is to Newtonian physics. I think it will be counterintuitive. I think it will be unexpected. And it may tell us things that are really shocking. Things, in other words, we're carving off the known world and giving God a smaller piece to land on, to stand on. But do you know that we're not just going to create another dimension tomorrow afternoon through science itself?
Replacement.
Right. A bigger map with new mysteries.
Yeah, what could be shocking?
I tell you what we're going to find out there, though, is another definition of what we are. And I mean, or not a definition, another vision of what we are. It's not going to be what you think it is or I think it is.
Can you formulate very prematurely what you... Can you formulate it very prematurely?
Already in the first stages of building a theory of brain, we've come across the point that there are clocks and rhythms in this thing that we never knew existed. Okay, that is to say, I now suspect that we have we have a program that's clocking through steps, but it has durations it runs. Okay, and if this is all true, it means there's a structure to cognition that we never guessed at. That it has time intervals of this and this and this, and it fits these things together, and that we're running on that clock. That there's and if I'm right about this much of it, that this is happening in a part of the brain which is not accessible, unfortunately, to consciousness. We're already thinking about putting consciousness in one part and non-consciousness in another part, with the part that unfortunately is running the programs being the non-conscious part. See, the line I like to use for this is that in memory's house there is no mirror. You cannot see yourself in the sense of the brain that's actually running you. Okay, you're running. So my sense is that as we begin to discover those rules, that we'll begin to see the cognition itself has an underlying structure that we never guessed at. All right, that's a very first step thing. But then once we begin to see the machine and the way it's calling up the stuff of sensory experience and conscious experience, I think we're going to get an idea then of what it is that what we mean when we say that you can experience the stuff that's called up. I'm not being, remember, this is premature, and it can't be precise. But we're getting a vision now of circuitries that have primitive underlying clocks that are sitting there, that are setting the duration of a thought, that are setting the how long you're going to be able to put string things together in your head without turning to this stuff, paper. And that once we have that once we begin to see how that stuff's worked out, I'll begin to understand why you speak sentences this long, why, all that sort of business. But I can't give you a feeling for it, really. It's in my mind, it's the ultimate.
Is it consoling to undress the human mind and see what's underneath? Because for so many people it's threatening.
Threatening?
Yeah. To unravel the God's mystery in our own heads.
I would find it immensely consoling. I would find it that if we can come up with something that, again, once we understand it, you will have then a much better, you'll have an explanation for why you're doing what you're doing, and possibly a way of regulating it and controlling it. We will give you the tools to say, oh, I'm sorry, I had that collection of thoughts got jumbled together because my corticostriatal clock obviously reset itself without me asking it to. Let me start over again. You'll say that sort of thing. You'll find yourself with no longer talking about mental exercises. In other words, explaining the phenomenon of memory encoding, explaining the phenomenon of brain aging, or explaining the phenomenon of cognition itself opens up possibilities, I think will open up immense possibilities. This is not a science that is saying we've explained it and now it's static and frozen and you can forget about it. Yeah. This is a science that says when we explain it, we will open up these possibilities for you. You will no longer be limited by this pathetic ignorance that we have about what's going on in our own heads. And you'll be able to use this information. And you'll be able to construct thoughts and designs and such. So that's my hope. That's my hope, and that's consoling.
You thought you had free will, but now we will offer you the real one.
That's right. That's right. And we'll be able to use it. That's right. So I think that's what we'll get from that. You know, that'll be that moment when your wife says something to you and you go, oh, what? And you, oh boy, there goes that old amygdala loop. Damn, I thought I had that under control. I guess I'm going to have to go back and do a couple hours of exercises. See? I think that's going to happen. So, no, I think we'll build a much more interesting human species when we do this.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
My first reflex should be, is more boring, predictable human beings.
Most human beings, I think, are limited by the inherent sense of modesty. I share with Gould this whole, you've talked to before, this whole business about IQ and intelligence and all this kind of business having been a terrible thing to tell people about. You know, oh, I'm limited to this, I'm limited to that. No, we brain scientists are in the end going to say, well, if you thought you're dumb, here's a drug. And if you thought you couldn't think, you come in here and we'll see what's wrong with you. No, I think this is our chance by going after the brain and trying to understand these features of it. I really expect that we're going to open up worlds that people have shut off to themselves.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly, some people have already found out how to program this thing in the most efficient way possible. That's maybe what we call genius.
Yeah.
All right. Suppose I told you that we will reach a point where we can do that on a rational basis. Would a world of Einstein's be a boring world? I would bet you a month's salary that the first insight we get, the first brain-based cognition theory, because I don't think we have any, the first one that grows naturally out of brain science will be something that we won't understand. We won't have that shared sense of beauty and of truth. We'll just go, that's the way it is, and I can't put it in language that we can share. I will bet you that's the way that turns out. In fact, I think it's already starting to shape that way. I think that's okay. If in the end of the day we realize that the 1500 cc brain cannot understand itself in conventional language, I think that we'll have words for that that'll be as different from free will as airplanes are from angels. I think that we'll have a new language for those kinds of questions, those issues. What about the mind? What about the body? What about the soul? The Cartesians and the rest. I think all those languages, soul, consciousness, free will, there'll be other words for it. There'll be a new kind of language. And I think, this is all pure intuition, that it'll be as strange to us as the quantum equations are. And so you'll say, well, what about free will? And we'll say, well, this is kind of like it. I mean, I always put those questions off because I'm confident that we're getting closer and closer to building a brain-based theory of things. So I leave aside questions of consciousness and free will. We'll just wait.
For other words to emerge, or no words to emerge, or simply equations, or worlds you can't understand anymore, even if you try finding it.
In a world that you can understand in its own language,
Yeah.
just as in the quantum world, you can understand that it has beauty and has immense consolation, but only in its own language. We cannot take the language of the 15-cell circuit and make that language match the quantum world. Even though the quantum world is completely real, we cannot do it. Maybe if we had 20-cell circuits, we could, but we can't now. Similarly, I think that when we get a brain-based theory of cognition, these words won't match it. We won't be able to use these words. The most beautiful, visual in the sensory domain, I would say I could almost pinpoint the thing that most took my breath away that was created by human beings would be the cave paintings in the south of France. Now, that may only be because I was...
Cro-Magnon.
Yeah. That may only be because I was so shocked, unexpected. I just had no preparation for how these things were going to look. You know, I mean, I knew what they were going to look like, but I had no idea that... Have you been there?
No.
Yeah. They're on, you know, they show them on television and everything else. None of this prepares you for it because they're taking advantage of these rocks and getting three-dimensionality, repeating figures to give you a sense of movement. All this is lost when you look at it in books or on television, at least to me. And so I'd seen it and I was very interested. This was part of this business of going backwards in time.
Yeah.
I'd spent an awful lot of time with the Cro-Magnon. The Cro-Magnon fascinated me, and their predecessors fascinated me. We'll come back to that in a minute. Because there's a point here to make about brains, but I wanted to see the paintings. So I went to see the paintings, and I was unprepared. I was like, wow, gorgeous, just beautiful.
Why?
Because they are.
No, don't say I can't explain. This is a kind of pure beauty. No, try to explain.
Well, I think we it's a balance. It's a balance of all right. It's a balance of color and meaning. That is just and mystery of the. And in some ways, I think that helps a great deal when we're talking about beauty created by human beings. There's something more to it than you're staring at it. I mean, it's not just a swatch of color. It's not just a figure moving. It's not just, they're exquisitely done. But you do get a kind of haunting sense of something. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're looking back across 20,000 years and you're seeing something and you realize that this thing was painted with a meaning. And you look at it and you get the exquisiteness of the color, the sense that this has meaning, the sense that this was there and it's something they've left behind. It evokes something that's probably already in the brain, but something very powerful. And by the way, in terms of beauty and consolation, that is consoling. For that particular instance of it is consoling. I don't know why, but it is.
Do you vividly remember yourself entering the caves?
Yeah, I do. As I say, it was unexpected. I was going to look at these things as historical artifacts. Yeah. Not as living art.
Yeah. Then you come in. Mm-hmm.
And then there was a gazelle-type animal going across this thing, and you could see it going across successive stops. And it was like painted with taking advantage of the three-dimensionality of the rocks, so it had perspective. And you look at it, and it was like somehow I suspected immediately to me that this meant something. And then the completion of the painting, the completion of the art, and the sense that it meant something, just.
And the mystery was that you didn't know what it meant.
No, it's that I had a doubt. I have a serious doubt that we'll ever know what it was, and maybe that was part of the beauty of it. Here was something that clearly meant something, but was never going to be retrieved, but something important. Something important was there on that wall, standing out, looking at us, left to us from 20-some thousand years ago. Now, if you walk around those caves long enough, you come across paintings that are absolutely astounding in their power, and for the same reasons. The one they call the magician and things. I mean, these things are. What does this mean? But they're very beautiful, very beautiful. And as a brain scientist, I knew they were painted by people that have bigger brains than we do. So I guess that's like, what would happen if a 1600 cc brain was trying to paint? That's what it looks like. Mm-hmm. What is it that happens at that moment that makes you think that that's beautiful? One thing that's going on here is that I think, in a way, there are these structures in our brain that fits. All right, even to the point of the mystery.
Yeah.
I mean, in other words,
order.
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 Order, but somehow order that brings with it a kind of haunting sense. In the same way that music, you hear a piece of music and there's a part of it that goes and it's haunting. You can't get it out of your head. What is that? You see that painting and you say, there's more to that painting than I see. It fits, it arranges itself, it orders your own disordered thoughts, and it leaves with it a feeling, a haunting feeling, a sense of mystery, right? A mystery about something that's terribly important that you can't get your hand on, you can't get your fingers on. You sort of dance around. In fact, that you begin to guess could have only been gotten through this vehicle. A scientific idea has elegance, and I mean by that kind of beauty in that it goes whammo into an existing structure, organizes it, leaves it there, and brings with it a kind of sense of great, great, profound importance. It's a feeling. Mm-hmm. It's a feeling. And that's what it is. And it's in that sense, I think there is beauty in science in the same way there's beauty in art, in aesthetic appreciation, as opposed to pure sensory appreciation. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
There's aesthetic appreciation that is sort of like, the skilled eye sees. And because this material comes in and organizes things for you and gives you, then there's an after sense, a taste afterwards that goes with it. Right? That's not that different than the business of saying that protein is the thing that cements memory. Now, you can't know that for a fact. But believe me, when you have that sense of it, it just fits all these jumbled things together.
And the sense is a sense of beauty, of completion, of ordering.
Right. With ordering is good. With this business of there's a thought that trails after it, a feeling of something profound. I don't know how else to put it. Something is the wrong word, but something that follows with it. That's all I can tell you. It's of that kind of sense.
How important is the sense of, I repeat a word, ordering? That is to say that in a chaotic world or a chaotic scientific problem, you suddenly see a certain order. And this is perhaps the deepest source of beauty and consolation you can experience. Unexpected order.
Yeah, it's no question that the ordering is a major part of it. There's no question to it about it. When I mentioned to you earlier that the way the scientific process works, it only gets to be fun. It only gets deep when you have enough pieces on the table to struggle with.
Yeah.
And they're laying here like this, and they're laying like that, and they're here, and this is there, and this is there. And you know that they're related, that they form a pattern. This one must come, and then this one must come, and then these two must go across, but you can't see it. And you despair of seeing it. All right? You despair of seeing that this will ever happen. In fact, that's what most people think. This pile will never be assembled into a structure, to a completed structure. That's not going to happen. And then there's one more observation, just one last observation. And that one comes in,
Bam.
and then like a magnet picking up filings and organizing them in a row, that happens. Yeah, there's a tremendous sense of the elegance of that solution, in the sense that all this confusion was reduced to a simple sentence. That's elegance. And there's a sense of beauty that comes with that, in the sense that I think the eye and the mind hate chaos. And they fit, they come together. But I would say again, I don't think, at least in my case, that you feel beauty as an emotion unless there's some, unless that melody is there. That haunting sense of something. When you see that landscape and you see all this and you see all those pieces assembled and everything else, you feel something.
You know that there is meaning, but the mystery remains.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, something of that kind. There's the piece that comes with it. It's opened the door to a new mystery. Maybe that's what we're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's when we see all that order, it allows us to realize there's a further mystery. Maybe that's what it is. And maybe that's what you see when you look at, great paintings or when you look at a landscape.
Mm-hmm.
It really moves you. I suspect that's what it is with science.
You talked about the combination of beauty, mystery, and possibilities.
Yeah, I think that's in a way that human beings have a kind of terror of claustrophobia, of intellectual and emotional claustrophobia, that you've reached a limit and you go no further. All there's left now is comfort, but you go no further. You have your house, you have the car, the dog, the children, the everything, and that is it. In a way, I believe that beauty, the reason that mystery plays a part in beauty is that, and why beauty has to have mystery in it, is because when there's beauty and then you have the mystery is possibility. Mystery is telling you there's more. More awaits you. Things that you don't know about. With, I should say perhaps, mystery almost says opportunity. Opportunity emotionally, opportunity intellectually. In those domains, there's opportunity. And in the very thought of opportunity, in the very thought of possibility, there's consolation. To take the connection that you're making in this program, that between that with possibility there's consolation. A person that has a disease, consolation, the only real consolation, well, not the only, but certainly a strong consolation comes with the thought there's possibility. When we do science and we open a mystery, we don't go, oh my God, yet another one. Is that all? There's going to be more and more of these things. No, we don't. We look at that. When we think back to all those mysteries that were in the past, and each of those mysteries opened up a possibility, and many of those possibilities led to tremendous things. And so it's a consolation. It's there. So maybe that's why, I guess, for me at least, beauty must bring with it a sense of mystery or haunting, unknown, because we're not closed off. We're not stuck in the closet.
You mentioned Anne, the patient of Luria.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he had this strange, that's in his Luria's book on this, he had this strange sense that dominated his life, that he was going to turn a corner and there was something waiting. That sense of something waiting is the great power of science. That is, if the reward of science is a kind of beauty and ordering, okay, the motive, the power is that something's waiting around the corner. If you just do one more experiment, there's something standing there around that corner, something that you don't know. Something deeply mysterious is waiting around that corner. And you're going to walk around that corner and you're going to see something like you've never seen before in your life. There's no other way to describe the motive of science. It's a drive to solution, to be sure, but it's a drive toward the unexpected. It's a deep pleasure in the unexpected, in the mysteries. But yeah, I think that's it is when the order comes. What a great scientific hypothesis brings with it order. All these pieces we were talking about earlier, laying on the table, now fit together. That's an elegant solution. I don't believe it's satisfying in the way, I don't think it's as beautiful is at the very moment you see it all come together and you see the beautiful ordering of this thing and the way it really is. I don't think is as beautiful as at that very moment you hear that sound that goes, but then, if that's the case, then, in that moment, that chill that comes with recognition.
That's the chilly moment.
Yeah. That moment, yes, exactly. Then that means that we could, you see? I think that's real. And that's to me, there's a kind of a beauty that's with that. Painters talk about this when they look at the landscape. People, the commonest example of this kind of thing in terms of beauty, I suppose it's the most hackneyed or common sight example, it would be the Mona Lisa. people look at the Mona Lisa. What is it about the Mona Lisa? It's a magnificent painting. It's got this, it's got that. But the landscape makes no sense, and the background makes no sense. The smile makes no sense. We know historically Leonardo was after that smile. Well, what is that? It's a beautiful painting, but why that painting? Why does that drive people crazy? Why do they keep looking at the mystery? Mystery is possibility.
Are you touched by it, Mona Lisa?
Yeah, I am. Leonardo gets to me. You know, Renaissance is one of the things that Renaissance art is something that I spent a lot of time with. And Leonardo gets me. You know, I look at the Madonna of the Rocks and it bothers me. What in the hell is this? What is it? You're looking at this and it's like, you know, what strange cave is the Virgin Mary in now? Why is she in this cave? You know, what kind of artistic imagination has put the Virgin Mary Baptist and the baby Jesus in a cave dripping water with it? What is he thinking?
Yeah.
What's that? What is that? Well, that painting bothers me. It agitates me. You know, there's something more that's going on here. So we're back to Lascaux. We're back to Dordogne. Something's happening here. Something's happening here. And because of the mystery, the chill, the unknown's possibility. And possibility, I would submit to you, is consolation. We're not, there's a way out. There's a place to go.
But, Gary, consolation. If you look at the caves of Lascaux, you know that the mystery will always remain.
That mystery, I think, always remains.
You can't get a solution.
No.
You
I don't
can't
think
get
so.
a solution for aging, yeah?
Mhm.
Processes of the mind. Not for the caves of Lascaux.
Right.
Nevertheless, it's beautiful and consoling.
Yes.
There is a difference.
Right. But but the very mystery of it is telling you in that case that human beings have possibilities that are unexplored and will be unexplored. And that's consoling. Those possibilities that if those people that painted Lascaux were giving us a message, if I were to make a guess as a total non-expert brain scientist addresses cave art, it would be something like, you're more than you think you are. You are much more. There's possibility here. And look at that. We've shown you something. You poor, pitiful 1350 cc brains will never understand this. But we've left you a message that says you have these possibilities. There's things to be understood. No, I think the notion of intellectual, emotional claustrophobia, that we look for beauty to let us get away from that. And beauty gets us out of that by showing us that there's more. There's more.
If I say laughter, getting hysteric, that's, my dear, the real source of beauty and consolation.
It's certainly a source of consolation. No question
The
about
moment itself, laughing, getting hysteric about nothing.
You know, it's funny about that. It certainly is the case that, but maybe the thing I see. There's a thing. Couple things come to my mind when I think about laughter. One is that when you really do it, when you really get into it, like you're describing, the thing that makes no sense at all. That you retrieve that thing we were talking about a bit earlier. You're back to being a child. You've cast off the adult life. You've thrown off all these restrictions. You're no longer, the claustrophobia has been pushed out. It's gone. You're free. And now, you know, you're there just laughing your head off. And I don't know about you, but for me, the sillier the thing that made me laugh, the better it is.
Yeah.
The more freely I laugh. There's this ridiculous piece of business as a television program in this country called Beavis and Butthead. And it is deliberately stupid. And these two characters are deliberately stupid, I think. And I don't have television, cable and all this, so I can't watch this. But someone bought me a video of it, so I watched it, and I found this to be, this is meant for teenagers, I found this thing to be absolutely gut-wrenchingly funny. Okay? And there's a particular bit I remember so clearly where there's a guy coming with his family. This is a cartoon, right? Yeah, have you seen it? No? Okay, well, it's a cartoon, and it's two teenagers who have no redeeming value, no redeeming virtues. They're just two punks. But they're working at a McDonald's or something, and this carload comes up, and they're working there. And there's a father in a car, standard American family, and he speaks into this little thing, and he says, "I'd like a cheeseburger with this and with that." And no, I think I'd rather have the cheeseburger this way with mustard, but no, forget the mustard, give me ketchup. Now, at these fast food places, you have no choice. They only have one cheeseburger. So the joke is. And one of these two teenagers is there going, looking at this, listening to this, and he goes, with this really ridiculous laugh, he goes, shut up. Well, this killed me. I mean, I'm on the floor. This perfect response to this kind of like, this middle-class American world intruding, and so I explain it, but it's impossible to explain. I suppose that's it. It's just that, it's funny. It's that all the pieces fall together. All the cultural pieces drop together at one moment. An immense amount of territory is suddenly condensed in the one instant, and you see it, and you realize how ridiculous it is, and you start laughing, and I couldn't stop. And of course, my friends were amazed, or surprised at least, because, this is really stupid stuff, right? It's just a guy going, shut up. So I'm rolling on the floor laughing. And I think that's a liberation again. It's a liberation from our own constraints for a moment. I was back to being a teenager. I was with those two guys, those two numbnuts that are sitting there, handing out the cheeseburgers, okay? And yes, that's a consolation. But think about what we were talking about earlier. I think that's interesting in the sense that, again, for one moment, the claustrophobia is removed. You're in a room filled with people who normally hold you in.
And then?
And you start laughing, and they're pushed aside. And I suppose the realization that you can do it, even after you stop laughing, is consoling. I don't know that it's beautiful, but it's consoling.
It's beauty and it's consolation as intense as it is fleeting. Now we're talking about laughing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Necessary.
Yeah. It's beautiful in the sense that you're making contact with something that is very, very real inside you, and that's very true, and you know it. You know it. It's again that sense of you know it. I suppose that's as close as I would give it to saying it's beautiful with a small b, to be sure, but there is that, to be sure. If you follow me, it's that there's an emotion that's in you, a real one, and it's not one you normally can make contact with, a feeling, a sense. It's there, and you make contact with it, and you bring it up, and it's there, and it's suddenly real and raw.
Not deliberately.
No, not deliberately, but it's there. And you know it's real, and you know it's true. Like I said, I see a connection to it, but I don't know. I have a hard time putting beauty to laughter. I just do.
If you make contact, what kind of person do you contact?
When I do that, I think I would actually, it's odd. I would go back to that thing that we were talking about earlier. I'm making contact with a continuous Gary. I suppose when I'm laughing the way you're describing laughing, or I was just
You're
talking
laughing
about
as if you were 10.
or 20, or 30, or maybe that Gary is still alive. Maybe it's all still there.
But only then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe only in that moment of real.
You're complete.
Yeah, only in that moment are you really making, the whole thing's back together again. And for one instant, you can go down that timeline and laugh like you did when you were 10. Laugh like you did when you were 15.
Hey, buddy, see any chicks yet?
Not yet. Where the hell is everybody? This sucks. Hey, let us in. We want to meet some chicks.
Go home, you dumb punks. It's Christmas Eve. Store's closed.
Oh, buddy, look! I got the new wet hooters!
Beavis, everything I need for the rest of my life is in this store.
Yeah, and it's closed. This sucks. Life sucks. Yeah. Life sucks like, then you, let's see, life sucks and then,
And then you die, bunghole.
oh, yeah, that's right. And then you die. You must die.